Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Heartland Mamas. I'm Marie Briel.
And I'm Heidi Henry, coming to you from two socially distant studios at the edge of the Great Red Divide. The Red Divide is that area between Illinois and the rest of the country where the voice of progressivism in the Democratic Party does not go across. So Murray and I are here to bring it to you. Yay! You can find all of our previous Heartland Mamas episodes at heartlandmamas.com on all podcast and streaming platforms, and of course on YouTube. So Murray, today you wanted me to introduce our topic. We were in pre-show and we were talking about we've been wanting to do a show about the violence and the violence that keeps perpetuating right now. Everybody is so worked up and so I don't know, just violence is like the answer to every question, you know. And the one thing we do know is that violence begets violence. And as we titled the show, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, because where does it stop? You know, what we're referring to is what happened up in Kenosha. And as a person from Illinois, finding out that it was somebody from Illinois that brought that to a head really was so disappointing, because I always think that in Illinois we do better than that. But maybe they were too close to being a Wisconsin toucher. I don't know. But when you think about social justice and unrest, a lot of social justice issues are met with unrest because people like the status quo. They don't like change. When things change, it makes people uncomfortable. And a lot of people go out of their way to never stretch the limits of their beliefs, to never grow bigger or better than who they are and what they were taught at their parents' knee. And I'd like to say that this has all been one giant catalyst since Trump took office, since he came down the elevator and called Mexicans horrible, horrible names and wanted to build a wall because of racism. And right now we're in our second war on racism. We can't call it anything less. And until this country turns around and faces the evils that created this country, which is genocide of black and brown people, of indigenous people, this is never going to go away. And unless we evolve, unless we change our philosophy and address what happened and make the vow to change, we are going to stay in this cycle of violence begetting violence. I don't see any difference. Do you, Marie?
No, I think there are a lot of components that you touched on there,
Right.
Heidi. We talk
It's
about a societal component. We talk about a independent component. I mean, you have to remember humans are inherently flawed. Humans
yes.
suck. Let's
Humans
face
are
it.
tribal.
Each people are driven by different instincts, and then you put on top of it the societal constraints that exist, and the constructs that we have allowed to be created and adhered to over time. You add to it classism, you add to it racism, you add
Right.
to it frustration and anger and lack of transparency, and you get a perfect storm.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that this is unique or an individual. This has been happening throughout time. We see these types of environments resurface and
Right.
explode, and it's exhausting and it's tiring.
It is.
But the violence, yes, an eye for an eye, and it's because humans suck. I guess
Well,
that's what I'm going to stay with that.
one of my favorite authors was the great physicist Carl Sagan, and he wrote a book that I read when I was in my impressionable 20s called Shadows of a Forgotten Ancestry, that explained racism worldwide and explained human tribalism, and the fact that part of the evolutionary cycle is when we all figure out that we're all rowing this boat together, that we are all, none of us are going to get out of it alive, and we all have to learn to work together. It was a very long book that came to several conclusions, and that being one of them. But the other conclusion it came to is that racism and bigotry are not sustainable for human function. They are contrary to the modern world. And we are seeing that playing out right in front of us. When we glorify violence and feel that violence is the only answer, I think about what happened to Jacob Blake, which was the catalyst that started up in Kenosha. And we all saw that video. And, I've read the police reports. He was not a good guy. The police knew who they were dealing with. But that doesn't justify shooting him in the back 7, 8 times. It just doesn't justify that level of violence. So you try to think about this hyper, these hyper situations where everything's tense and all the different ways it could be handled. Now you can't change how it was handled. It was handled how it was handled. And unlike Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, Breonna Taylor was in bed, so she wasn't resisting arrest. She was just in bed when she was murdered. There are 1,000 different ways you can take to handle that situation. There are so many different ways they could have handled Jacob Blake that day. And instead, they've taken a guy that's led a rather rough life, and they've idolized, they've put him on a platform way up here as somebody that we need to look at for change. Now, it can be argued that the societal regimens that he was raised under caused him to behave in the manner which created the police record he has. You could make that argument. You could make a dozen different arguments about a dozen different threads. It doesn't make any of them right. And it goes back to the eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, Marie. We just can't keep behaving like this and expect us to survive as humanity. We can't. Our weapons are getting more deadly. We're walking the streets with them. We're allowing children apparently to have access to them and to leave the state to take care of the business in another state. And we can't expect anything to ramp down or calm down or to get to any resolution until we all realize that this way of doing humanity is not sustainable.
Now, Heidi, I'm not going to disagree with you. I love that about you. That's one of the things that I like so much about you is you are such a genuine person who truly believes in a good outcome. But we need to be honest here and look at where we are as a society and why this is happening,
Yeah.
as opposed to, we just need to all stop being mean. No offense.
No.
But we just all need to stop being mean to each other because we have to love. That's nice, but that's not how it works.
I know.
Right?
I
So
know.
we mentioned a little bit about the socioeconomic factors, the racial factors, the ethnic factors. All of these various components define what construct we live by. And
Right.
that has been so diluted and poisoned. And we've talked about this countless times. We've talked about the myth of America. One of my biggest pet peeves is that we have idolized a false history, that
Yes.
we don't actually know how things really were.
Right.
And I also get frustrated with those people that end up being idolized in our society. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates,
Christopher
successful
Columbus.
people. But
Yeah.
when you have to take a look at that and go, okay, that is not necessarily the definition of success, because most of them that we look toward or are taught are to be worshipped are capitalists.
Right.
They're mercenary capitalists. So we're always going to do what's in our best interest because that's part of human nature. And then the socioeconomic aspect plays into it. And you have sides being formed politically. So you have the right, the left, you have the NRA nuts saying that, you have weird people saying that he did this because he has a divine gift for spotting out the bad guys, or you have folks saying good vigilantism, that's what needs to happen, or so you've got all of these. So while the sentiment is absolutely beautiful of we can't function as a society until we stop this, I don't see how it's possible to stop this between human nature and the societal construct that we have created as humanity, but particularly the European colonialism and exceptionalism idea that America has internalized. I just don't see that ever happening.
That exceptionalism is not American exceptionalism. It's white, male American exceptionalism. And we've talked about this many, many times. And I told you, I go and read message boards and articles from people that I don't philosophically agree with. You know, they're readily available on the internet, and you can go and read them. And you have to be able to go in and read them and then get out before your brain explodes. But I told you that.
I do the same thing, but I don't do the reading of them. I listen to talk radio, conservative
See,
talk
you can do
radio.
that.
That's my.
Yeah,
You're the reader.
I'm the
Mine
reader.
is the yeah.
Yeah, I have to read it
To
because I
hear
have.
what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I have to set it down and walk away and come back to it because I'm just like, how can your brain be so malfunctioning? You know, and one of those malfunctions I read about, and I want to go into this on what happened up in Kenosha, was the fact that this 17-year-old kid had a gun he's not legal to have here in Illinois, went to Wisconsin where he's also not legal to have that gun, but because they're trying him as an adult, they say that that charge doesn't apply. I can't even wrap my head around that type of logic, Murray. That's why I have to read it and set it down because I had to go back and read it. I'm not kidding you, like 6 times and go, what did I just read?
So let me see. I'm trying to come up with an equivalent for this logic to help our listeners understand.
Mm-hmm.
If it was illegal for him to have the gun
Right.
in Illinois and illegal for him to have the gun in Wisconsin because he wasn't 18.
Right.
And yet he is being tried as an adult for the heinous crimes that he committed. And
Murder.
they're trying to drop the charge that he's being tried as an adult. So, of course, he was able to have the gun. So that's like saying
He only murdered him
the
a little bit.
legality of the issue is not the question. He broke the law. It doesn't matter what age he is or how they decide to try him. There is a law and it was broken. One of many laws.
In
and
both
that was
states.
the first start of it.
In both states.
Right.
You know, and then the other really weird one I shared with you pre-show, and you touched on it a little bit, was when he went through this junior police academy training in Antioch, that somehow they recruit these savants, these criminal savants, that can sniff out. That was one of the things. They give out a pheromone so they can sniff out the bad guys, and that's why he shot him. Murray.
All right, so here, okay, so
they developed his sense of smell,
about that.
or his ESP. Yeah, this is a logic.
You have these crazy theories out there justifying the behavior of a young man, and none of this matters. None of the theories, nothing matters, because the act was committed, and then motions were set in action, and there's nothing we can do to go back, and even trying to combat it moving forward just seems almost mind-blowingly stupid.
Well,
I mean, come on. Okay, so I mean,
yeah.
I really need a second here.
It's like he's one of the X-Men, you know?
Right. Like he has a superpower.
He has a superpower.
Or he has some sort of bad guy ESP. But that leads to an even bigger question. And we talked a little bit about this in our pre-show. So let's just say crazily, okay, he has some sort of X-Men superpower that allows him to sniff out bad guys. Right. And this police academy, junior academy in Antioch trains those specialized kids.
Right.
Okay, fine. Like we're giving this credence, even though we know that the probability of it is remote, to say the least. So you have this. You are saying. I'm so sorry. This is just mind-blowing.
I know.
Okay.
Listen, Murray, this is why I read it, because I have to set it down and go, what the hell did I just read? because there's people that walk among us that think this way. That have to justify murder somehow.
So let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
We also justify the murder of the two victims because one had a criminal record. He was in for a misdemeanor for 6 months, a county record,
Okay.
and that
That's
was
a
sort of the justification that they came
good
up with.
sense of smell there,
And the
kid.
but even if all of these are true, he never was hired or worked for the car dealership where it happened, and
Nope.
that was another myth that they said.
Right.
He was not invited there. He was not a
No.
member of any law enforcement agency, nor any law enforcement agency that had any jurisdiction
Nope.
over that area. He's a vigilante, is what he is, a twisted, sad vigilante. Then we there's a whole other area we need to talk about someday, and that is, you know, even if all of these stories about this guy are true, the point is he should not have shot. If you are being trained to sneak out evil, to sniff it out, your job is to detain, probably. I don't know. I've never been through this
Point
class.
out to somebody with
To
a
detain until
bigger.
they can get a just,
Yeah. Maybe get somebody with a bigger
so they can
superpower
get
than
a
yours.
fair and just
Trial.
right. Maybe, but you cannot be the judge, jury, and executioner, and that is exactly what these types of folks think they are,
Right.
and they're not. So even if you give him every ounce of wild conspiracy, crazy bullshit Q theory, even if you admit that all of those are great, you still have the fundamental argument that started our conversation with the victims who are killed because they're in the wrong place or they're the wrong skin color and they've been handled the wrong way. None of that involved shooting. None of that was necessary.
Right.
None of the overuse of force, none of it was necessary.
Yeah.
Police officers' jobs isn't to kill someone and then ask questions later. No, their job is to find out what is going on and provide solutions. Does that involve criminals sometimes? Yes, but it also doesn't. And we have this one we've talked about forever, and and none of that is real. Okay, I'm done with my rant.
And the sad part about that is you were breaking up a little bit while you were doing that. I don't know if it was because you were really ranting, but but here's the thing. You cannot justify homicide. It's not justifiable, right? Unless they've gone through the court system in the United States and have a death sentence. There's no such thing as justifiable homicide.
Here, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Justifiable. It is you are even no, you are not judge, jury, and executioner.
Well,
not
and
one
people,
person
but
should ever be responsible for the fate and decision of for the investigation and decision and execution of that decision. That is absurd. That's criminal.
Well, wait, Murray, we're going to have some detractors that are going to say, what about the stand your ground law that they have in some of the southern states and the castle law, where if somebody's breaking into your house, you get to shoot and kill them? I'm saying, would I do that if somebody was breaking into my house? Well, my dog would probably kill him first, but he's not a nice dog. When people come in. So that's, we usually meet outside. Just how he is. He can't help it. But on the other hand, I totally respect that philosophy. I don't disagree with it. If somebody's coming in with the intent not to rob you, because that's just stuff. But if they're coming in to physically harm you, yeah, I can see the castle law or stand your ground. But like those people that were upset in St. Louis that brought out their guns because they thought people were walking on their lawn, right? And they weren't walking on their lawn, they were in a public street. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous beyond recognition. That is like when you can justify that, you can justify what happened in Kenosha, right? You can justify that, you can justify what happened in Kenosha. But I look at this as he wasn't even part of a rogue militia because he wasn't in a militia, right? And I know a lot of states, not Illinois, but other states, Michigan, North Dakota, Idaho, Montana, have had problems Oregon right now with the fires right now is going through problems with rogue militias. Armed people that aren't hired by the government, that aren't authorized by the constitution of the state that they're in, coming into patrol illegally. Those are rogue militias. That's how the state's constitutions read in every one of those states. I went through and read every one of them. And we have to wrap our head around, either we need clarification on what is a well-regulated militia. Is it governmental or is it private enterprise, private ops? And we don't have that. And that's why people like this person up in Kenosha goes up there with a gun not meant for hunting, even though in Wisconsin you can have that gun. It's considered a hunting rifle. And I will tell you that if you need to hunt with that gun, anything that lives in Wisconsin, you're a really bad shot and a really poor hunter. A regular 22
Talked
out of
about that before.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I know. My dad would say you're just a piss poor hunter. You need 3 shots. one to miss, one to hit, one to finish the job if you need it. And you should only need 1 bullet. That's what my pops taught me when he taught me to shoot. So, and that's a whole nother topic. It's like these guns were meant to hunt humans. They weren't meant to hunt bears, and they weren't meant to hunt elk, and they weren't meant to hunt deer. I'm trying to think of anything else that's big up there. I think they have a few bobcats up there, or cougars in Wisconsin, or sightings. But really, legitimately, there's nothing that they have up there. There's no like stampeding hippopotamuses, which are the most dangerous animals on the planet, in the United States. People, come on, let's grow up a little bit and own what we're doing. We're perpetuating this eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, is perpetuating the Wild West myth, which was a Hollywood production. It didn't really happen that way. The good guys didn't necessarily always wear white hats. A lot of times they didn't have hats because cowboys were poor. So
I think, Heidi, you really kind of hit it on a good note and a great place to sort of wrap up this very long and deep conversation. And that is, what we've mentioned many times, in addition to our other favorite topics, is the dilution of history and the twisting, the Hollywoodization of history. And not just the Hollywoodization of history, but our entire fundamental education system of how and why things are what they are. So you may be right. Kyle may have thought he was a part of some sort of crazy militia, that it was his job to defend and protect. And a lot of people out there are under these weird misconceptions. And if we had, more clear definition and had been taught from the beginning and weren't violent, hadn't been glorified,
right,
we would probably be in a very different situation. But because we are not, what we need to do is find solutions to move forward and do it right.
Yeah, I totally agree, Marie. I cannot find anything that I would add to that, because you're right on. He thought he was a welcome part of the defense of a car lot from somebody he did not know, who didn't call to ask him. I don't know what the parental involvement was on this. I think that's still unclear. And all we know is that we can't keep doing this, everybody. We cannot keep pretending we're John Wayne, because we're not. He had a script, and the guns had fake bullets in them, and he went home at night. It's just like every time I see him ride with his reins in his teeth. Anybody who rides knows that that's a great way to lose your teeth. Guns ablazing. Who's going to shoot? I've been on a horse. You can't shoot one gun hardly very well, without much less 2. So I'm calling bullshit.
Well, and we are too.
Yeah.
So when you hear these stories, when you see these articles, we all can tell that they're crazy. We can all tell that they're extreme. But these extreme things have some basis in our inability to understand what is real and what is not.
To move past where we are.
Incredibly sad, and we need to figure out a way to teach reality.
So
folks, thanks for joining us for a deep dive into everything related to what's wrong with violence, racism, and hatred of everything. Tune in on next Tuesday live at 2:00. We're here on Facebook every Tuesday and Thursday. for our 2020 candidate series. We've got great candidates up and down the ballot, from county judges to Congress, federal Congress people. So give it a check out. Check out Heartland Mamas,
MA.
mamas.com.
Yep.
Wherever you get your podcasts, like, subscribe, share. That's how, as Heidi said in the beginning, we get our message out to everyone who doesn't get the message.
Right. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Take care now. Catch us on all podcast platforms. See you later. Oh, and on Demcast USA. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.